All right, in this explainer, we're going to conduct an operational analysis of the Nationalist campaign from late April to early June of 1937. The objective here is to really examine how they established a consolidated base of departure for that final, decisive assault on Bilbao's Iron Ring.
So, what was the big picture? Well, the operations that took place between the 30th of April and the 5th of June were entirely preparatory. This was all about shaping the battlefield, securing absolutely critical terrain, and getting forces into position for the main event, cracking the Iron Ring itself.
So how did these operations actually play out on the ground? Well, you can break it down into a few key characteristics. The Nationalists used successive, independent, brigade-level efforts, basically moving from north to south. Their superiority in artillery and aviation was without a doubt decisive. And they combined this firepower with complex maneuvers that constantly kept the Republican flanks threatened and off balance. Now, in response, the Basque forces launched incredibly determined counterattacks, but they were ultimately attritional. They'd fall into this brutal cycle of losing a key position and then bleeding their units almost dry trying to take it back.
Okay, let's start with the first major operational sector, the fight for the Sollube Massif. And this whole action kicked off with an unexpected crisis that honestly threatened to derail the entire plan right from the get-go.
On the left here, you can see why the Sollube Massif was so important. Tactically, it completely dominates the Mungia plain. It's the key that unlocks the approaches to Bilbao. Now, over on the right, we see the source of that initial crisis. On April 30th, against explicit orders, General Piazzoni's Italian Flèches Negres Brigade advanced on their own initiative, motu proprio, and seized the coastal town of Bermeo. This created a really exposed and completely unsupported salient.
The Basque command jumped on this mistake immediately, as the map on the left shows they launched a determined counterattack on May 3rd and 4th that isolated Bermeo and threatened a major disaster. Nationalist command had to rush reinforcements just to stabilize the front. Only then, once the line was stable, could the main methodical assault on the Sollube Massif finally begin on May 6th, proceeding as it was originally planned.
And the Republican reaction to this main advance was absolutely furious. The map on the left shows heavy counterattacks hammering the lines on May 9th and 10th. From there, the fighting just evolved into this brutal, attritional slugfest. You can see on the right, between May 11th and 13th, it was all about key objectives like Height 606 being taken, lost, and then retaken in a series of incredibly costly assaults and counterassaults.
After pause to reorganize, operations kicked off again on May 19th. And this is where you really start to see the Nationalist advantage in maneuver make a difference. As you can see on the left, they used that superiority to finally break the stalemate. This all culminated in the final advance from May 20th to the 22nd, shown on the right, which just rolled up the remaining defenses and secured the entire Massif.
So after 16 days of just extraordinarily harsh combat, the final line on the Sollube Massif was established on May 22nd. The objective was secure, yes, but it came at a high cost. And the Basque forces, even though they were defeated here, had definitely shown how tenacious they could be.
With Sollube secured, the operation then shifted to the next key objective, the Bizcargui Massif. In this phase, this would prove to be a real turning point in the campaign. This is where the Basque capacity for resistance was critically broken.
The operational order on the left shows the plan, a main effort by the I Brigade to seize the Massif. On the right, you can see the execution. The key heights were seized by surprise at dawn on May 11th. But what followed, from the 11th to the 15th, was staggering. No fewer than 11 violent division-level counterattacks. This is the point where Basque resistance began to shatter. Their forces were just thrown against the objective again and again without success. To give you a sense of the sheer intensity of this fight, especially the artillery bombardments, the Nationalist commander, General Garcia Valino, described the scene as an authentic lunar landscape. The ground was literally reshaped by shellfire.
Okay, so with the northern flank secure, the focus now shifted south. The next phase was all about penetrating the Ibazabal Valley, a complex operation designed to envelop the Peñas de Mañaria and occupy the Arratia Valley.
This was a pretty complex maneuver, and it was broken down into 3 distinct phases. First, an advance along the northern watershed of the Ibazabal River. Second, a deep envelopment of the formidable Peñas de Mañaria. And third, the final occupation of the key objective, Peña Lemona.
So, Phase 1 kicked off with some very costly preliminary actions from May 9th to the 15th, just to secure the line of departure. As you can see on the map to the right, the main advance on the 16th and 17th successfully secured that high ground north of the Ibizabal, culminating in the occupation of Amorabira.
Next up, Phase 2. From May 22nd to the 24th, Nationalist forces executed a deep envelopment of the Peñas de Mañaria. This was smart. Instead of a costly frontal assault on these rocky strongholds, they bypassed them, which liberated the communications between Vitoria and Durango and allowed them to dominate the Artillaria Valley from the heights.
And that brings us to the operation's culminating engagement, the fight for Peña Lemona. It was initially taken with very little resistance on May 29th, but from May 30th to June 5th, this place became the epicenter of a furious battle, an absolute meat grinder. It was lost to a massive counterattack on June 3rd and only definitively retaken after another bloody assault on June 5th.
And just to put the cost of this fight into perspective, on June 3rd alone, the day the position was temporarily lost, the Nationalist 2nd Brigade sustained 253 casualties. That is a staggering number for a single unit in a single day fighting for one hill.
Now, it's also crucial to note something else that was happening at the same time. Between May 26th and June 1st, a demonstration, a diversionary action, was conducted in the Orduña sector. And this was key, because that action successfully fixed Basque reserves in place, preventing them from reinforcing the decisive fight happening at Peña Lemona.
Okay, so let's step back and summarize the results of this month-long campaign of preparatory operations.
And this map really tells the whole story. By June 5th, the mission was accomplished. From the Sollube Massif up in the north, through the Bizcargui, and anchored on Peña Lemona in the south, a consolidated base of departure had been fully secured. The Nationalists were now perfectly poised for the final assault on the Iron Ring of Bilbao.
This entire analysis is based on the exhaustive work of Colonel F.J. Victor Rodrigo, which is available at the website you see on the screen. The key takeaway from this whole operation is the effective, if very costly, combination of firepower and maneuver against an incredibly determined defense. But it leaves us with a question. Was the high price of this attritional phase a necessary cost for positioning forces to break the Iron Ring, or was it a grim foreshadowing of the brutal fight that was still to come?